All right, thanks everybody for joining us for our November 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting and zooming on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And just to start with our preamble that due to the coronavirus COVID-19 emergency, the City of Courtenay, with the authority of Ministerial Order M192, Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Processes, Order Number 3, implemented changes to its open council meetings. In the interest of public health and safety, and in accordance with Section 3.1 of the Ministerial Order Number 3, M192, in-person attendance by members of the public at council meetings will not be permitted until further notice. Council meetings are presided over by the mayor or acting mayor with electronic participation by council and staff via live web streaming. And with that, we do have 3 sets of minutes to adopt. We could probably adopt them concurrently if we would like, and then if there's any issues, we can address them.
Move adoption.
Second.
Excellent. And are there any questions or concerns regarding any of the minutes? Seeing none, I'll assume that these are all accepted unanimously by council. Next, we have introduction of late items, and nobody has mentioned anything to me today. So if you think of something, you can maybe give us a notice of motion when we do council updates. But other than that, we will move into staff reports and presentations, starting with development services. If someone can move that.
I'll move that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morin. With that, I'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. With this, I'll pass it over to Matthew Fitzgerald, our Manager of Development Planning, to summarize the report and take any questions that Council may have.
Thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council. So this is a proposal for an amendment to the OCP and zoning bylaw to facilitate a 12-unit townhome development. Council will remember that this originally came to the July 20th meeting. The application has since been updated with additional details around garbage bin storage and secure bike parking. Regarding the garbage and recycling storage, the utility building that was shown at the rear of the property has been enlarged. And this also now includes a secure room for 16 bike and e-bike parking stalls. As a result of these changes, the parking that's proposed for the development does decrease, however, from 17 stalls, which was previously shown, to 14 stalls. Staff have updated the bylaws to reflect these changes and are recommending that Council gives both bylaws first and second readings, and that the proposal proceeds to public hearing. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Any questions by Council?
Mayor, sorry, I don't have my list up. Maybe I'm not first, but I'd be happy to move the recommendation if you like.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move that based on the November 2nd, 2020 staff report entitled Update Proposal, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 3014 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3005 for 1375 Piercy Avenue. Council approve option 1 and complete the following steps. The Council give first and second readings of the Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 3014 and designate the subject property as multi-residential. The Council give first and second readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3005 to create a new CD29 zone and rezone the subject property to such. And that Council directs staff to schedule and advertise a statutory public hearing with respect to the above referenced bylaws following the resumption of regular Council meetings or upon approval of an alternative process.
Second that.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I was actually away when this matter came before council back in July. I did watch the video of the meeting, and it seems that staff have done some work with the proponent on this development proposal. I note that there was a proposal for this site a number of years ago that was rejected after a particularly vociferous showing from the public at a public hearing. It's a different proposal now. It's also being put forward by Habitat for Humanity. I'm certainly interested in seeing what the response is from the public when we do have a public hearing if this passes, and I'm willing to support it on that basis. And I would just like to clarify from staff if we are in fact getting closer to having a proposal for the safe conduct of public hearings, please.
Yeah, maybe I could jump in here, Mayor. Yeah, if on November the 16th, we plan on coming to council with a report for electronic public hearings. We've, you know, in light of the recent COVID numbers, which are astounding today, that we've changed our shift a little bit towards electronic public hearings. And now, of course, with Kate and Wendy in their full roles, we feel that we have the capacity to do so. So November the 16th.
Thank you.
All right, and Councillor French.
Well, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for staff for working on this. I'm pretty excited to see it come back, and I think the changes are very positive, and obviously in response to a lot of the feedback that we gave during the last meeting. Looking at the changes in design, I understand that a lot of these amenities will be coming from our affordable housing fund, which I think is the right place to help fund this actually affordable housing complex. So I'm wondering if staff can give us a rough ballpark of how much money is in our fund, and then how much money we expect to be putting towards this project, just roughly.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Maybe I could direct that one to Ian. I think he has more information on it.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been a while, probably about 2 months since I checked, but at that time we were somewhere around 850,000 in that fund. The exact number that we spend on this particular development or contribute to it, we've yet to determine. What we're waiting for is if this proceeds through to development permit and design stage, then when they do the detailed design on the improvements, we'll come back to council. And at that time, council can determine how much of that they want to fund. So we haven't committed to fund the full works. It's just that the city would contribute towards those works. So that report will be forthcoming if the project proceeds.
Okay, so it's more of an open negotiation at this point with the developer?
That's correct.
Okay, and if I recall, the ballpark estimate on the works needing to be done, was that in the 100,000 range, or was it 200,000, or like the total amount that they were suggesting they needed help with?
I believe, and I don't have the old report right in front of me, but I believe it was in that 100,000 range, largely to do with paving of the lane. The other improvements would be on site, and that's their stormwater management. That was a bit of a concern at the last council meeting.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks very much for that. I appreciate it.
Excellent. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge staff and also the proponent of this development in bringing back changes to council that are very reflective of the concerns that were raised the last time, and what direction things needed to shift in order to see this proposal go to first and second reading. And I'm hopeful that the feedback that we receive through the public hearing process will be somewhat supportive, although I'm sure that there are still remaining concerns. It's a big change in the neighborhood to go from essentially what's an empty lot to a townhouse development. So I imagine that there still will be issues for us to consider. I'm happy to see better bike storage and also waste storage addressed in this. I think the idea of having separate bins pulled out to the curb for recycling, yard waste, garbage, and then eventually our green bin is just not a feasible way of handling waste pickup. So I'm glad to see that there was an improvement made in that regard. I also see that the parking requirement is the parking provided is just over 1 stall per unit. And I'm wondering if staff can answer what is currently required under zoning for, say, an apartment complex that is 1 to 2 bedroom development. I can't recall from the last time if most of these units are 2 or 3 bedroom, but I'm just wondering how the 1 stall lines up to other types of multi-unit development that's in and around downtown.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the zoning requirement for an apartment would be 1.5 stalls per unit. So that's what the bylaw requirement is. However, on almost all, and council would be aware, almost all other proposals, we're seeing pressure to lower that variance or
yeah.
This would be slightly less than what we're seeing, at about 1.2 stalls per unit.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that. I just wanted to know what we are comparing it to. Thanks for the answer. That's all my questions.
I don't see any further questions from council. So with that, we can take our vote, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
I'm in favor.
Excellent, and I'm in favor as well. All right. And that brings us actually to reports and updates from council. And so starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Nothing particular to add today. Thanks, Mayor.
Excellent. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to share a webinar that I attended this week. It was pretty exciting, so I thought I might share with council and staff and whoever else tunes in for our meetings. It was on actually public transit and talking about the opportunity to go to an on-demand transit system. And just so people know, that's where we use like an Uber style program that tells the bus where to go within the confines of its area and picks up people and drops them off based on that program. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And they're using it in several municipalities in Canada. And it's actually a Toronto-based company that's come up with the programming and the technology. I imagine there are a couple others doing it as well. This particular company hosted the webinar, so they were obviously very much in favor of their own programming and technology. But they were using it in several municipalities that would change over their lower performing routes. So routes that would generally be bigger and longer and not pick up very many people, and they were changing it to this on-demand system, and it was pretty exciting. So I'm helping in a very small way bring this forward to the CVRD, and hopefully this can help solve some of our issues with our low usage on some of our transit routes. That's all I had to add. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. I'd like to highlight the seminar that I attended, virtually Watershed Resilience, Climate Change Collaboration and Landscape Restoration. Very well attended seminar over 2 days, sponsored by the local conservation strategy and related organizations. And I just want to highlight a couple of the descriptions of workshops that took place. One of which said, local government leadership is making it clear that meaningful community engagement and climate change awareness are critical to all levels of community planning. That was describing a session which, among other things, had presentations from 2 of our city planners related to our official community plan process. And I want to give a nod to our planning staff, who I think are being very innovative in how they're engaging community people, particularly in the community workshops that many of us took part in along with local citizens last week. Another session noted the following, where it said that the Comox Valley has never witnessed the scale of cross-sector and cross-jurisdictional work towards watershed sustainability that we have in the past 5 years. That's commentary from our local agencies that are primarily involved in stream keeping, landscape restoration, work related to our watershed. And I think it's a tribute to those organizations, as well as to all the governments of the community, and the awareness that we have of how integral our watershed is to our very way of life and the health of the citizens of the community, as well as the health of the planet. So I appreciate the opportunity to go to both those events. I'd also like to acknowledge the tremendous community effort in putting on the annual Child Development Center telethon on Sunday. I know the mayor was there collecting, answering the phone. I had the pleasure, along with Regional District Director Edwin Grieve, of helping to open up the event by singing "O Canada." And it's always a very good community event. I don't know how much, what the total was that was raised this year, but perhaps the mayor can fill us in on that when he reports. And I'll make that it for today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Lynn. Next, Councillor McCollum, you said that you were okay today to pass, I believe.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll just chime in about the OCP workshops, seeing as they haven't been brought up yet. I mean, all of council took 1 or 2 workshops in the last week and listened to community feedback about neighborhood-specific input to our OCP process. And I just wanted to say that both of the workshops that I attended were really great. They were they had a wide variety of people from the neighborhood participating, as well as community members. And I just want to acknowledge what a great job staff did in providing information, engaging with the group, and just making it a really enjoyable experience.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Moran.
Thanks, Mayor. We may have to reverse the order of these updates, because by the time it gets to me, my updates are all already well spoken. So just echoing Councillor Hillian's comments about the Watershed Resilience Conference. It was excellent, a real cross section of interesting topics and great speakers. And as Councillor Hillian said, a fantastic job done by our staff and planning. And I'll echo what Councillor McCollum said about the workshops. I've done a couple, one on each side of the river, and it was they were great, really engaged folks on the walks. Both walks went over time for those who were interested. So really appreciating staff with all these all this extra organization and work, and just really well done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Moran. Councillor Theos, I know you said you were good, but did you have anything you want to add?
I was just going to say that I appreciate the comments that were brought forward by the councillors who that spoke before me, but I was also taken an interest in what Councillor Frisch said about on demand with the buses, and the fact that many times the buses being very low occupancy. I think that this is a good opportunity to actually meet the demand where the demand is. So I was very happy to hear Councillor Frisch bring that forward. So an interesting concept that I'm going to look into more further.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I've got a few things. Again, the workshops I think were really good for a variety of reasons. I got to go on 2, one at the air park and one downtown with totally different people in both groups. And I think one of the things, besides getting out and walking around and seeing these things, I think was extremely valuable. I'll give a shout out to the I'm just going to mute Mano, your microphone there. Just a shout out to the staff when discussions maybe were in a lull, they were able to ask some really good sort of deep diving questions to get that conversation going and to really get the feedback that they required to move this process forward. And again, just I think everybody that was part of those events, I think had a good time there. Other things, we actually had a meeting, or sorry, a photo op last week at the new Veterans Memorial Parkway. We now have the actual poppies on the sign there, which I think is again good recognition for our veterans and the fact that we have an actual base here in town. So I want to give again another shout out to staff for that. I think they did a fantastic job. And in fact, somebody handed me a poppy today, so thanks to Rayanne for sneaking that into me. I did have one, but it's on my shirt under here, so it was looking a little bit hidden, but now I've got two. So another thing, the farmers market had its first meeting at its first weekend or Saturday at the Native Sons Hall, and a couple of really big things that I think, one, again, working with staff, working with our safety health officers, they did a fantastic job. And for those that made it there, you may have noticed that lots of people were sold out of lots of things. So the fact that not only, again, the weather cooperated, but I think people were there, people were very respectful, following the guidelines. And then for the actual producers that were there selling their wares, they actually were running out of stuff. So I think that really bodes well for a variety of reasons in terms of food security but just I think that during the pandemic, people have really turned to the farmers market. A few other things. There was also the telethon, as Councillor Hilling mentioned. I really again want to give a huge shout out, an event that they didn't know if it could happen. And for the last 10 or so years, I've helped live stream that event, which of course this year became that much more important. And the fact that they actually raised $96,000, and often more money comes in after the telethon, so that number is probably going to go up a little bit more, but raising almost $100,000 and looking at the events that have continued this summer throughout the pandemic, and then now this one here, to see them hitting numbers that they've never hit before. The online auction for the Child Development Telethon as of Sunday morning before the telethon was already at 150% of its goal. And so I think that really speaks well of our community and the volunteers that come out. Lastly, I think I just want to mention we did have Halloween on the weekend, and one of the things that happens every year around Halloween as well is fireworks. And so over the last week or so, I've been talking with the various leaders throughout the Comox Valley around fireworks and the angst that it creates, and emails and phone calls I get about it, as well as some of the other leaders. So we'll maybe be, I've been asking them to sit down and have a bit of an ad hoc committee to really look at the future of fireworks in the Comox Valley as a whole. It's very ad hoc right now, what you can do in various municipalities and local governments. So really looking forward to that. And lastly, just another plug, every week I meet with people during the Meet the Mayor events, and really like, even though it's by phone or Zoom or at a coffee shop now, those discussions I have with people is really, I think, really useful and helps move the dial on a bunch of things. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Councillor Hilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge two things. One, a nod to Councillor Cole Hamilton, who was among the presenters participating in the Watershed Resilience Seminar, and did an excellent job as usual. I also wanted to acknowledge our Public Works and Bylaw departments and give a shout out to the online request forms that staff are encouraging us and citizens to use. I've had experience with those in the last couple of weeks, both reporting issues myself and encouraging citizens who are passing things along to me to use those forms. I note the RCMP also have those reporting forms available, and I've seen really good response and turnaround from both our public works and bylaw staff, who I know have a lot of huge challenges on their plate to deal with. But it's good to see that the regular business of the city is being attended to with that sort of efficiency. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And I don't think I mentioned Councillor Hillian actually opened the telethon by singing "O Canada" with Edwin Grieve, and again, fantastic job on the whole event. So thanks so much for that. There was a couple other meetings I actually missed. One was ICE-T, the Island Coastal Economic Trust, where I'm the chair of our local committee, where we elected our new board chair, Aaron Stone, and really, again, a big shout out to the ICE-T staff who've been working really hard with businesses across North Vancouver Island here and the Sunshine Coast to really address some of these COVID-19 pandemic WorkSafe BC things, to really get them even help them with technology issues so they can be working with folks. And we've also had all of our recommendations, the vast majority of the short-term recommendations going out from the Economic Recovery Task Force. And so really looking to see how those get implemented in the coming months. So, and with that, I'll look back to council one more time in case there's anything that we've forgotten. It's been a long time since we've had one of these, so at least we only went back a week or so. We didn't go back for the whole summer, but I think I really want to appreciate everybody's patience as we've adapted to these meetings. And seeing none other things, the next thing on the list is Mayor Wells' resolution for the Comox Valley RCMP funding. And if somebody would like to move that, that would be excellent.
I can move that, Mayor. And let me pull that up. So whereas the City of Courtenay has for years used annual gaming fund revenues to pay for 2 full-time RCMP officers, whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has reduced 2020 gaming fund revenues by 75%, with future years' revenues unknown, whereas the City of Courtenay has applied a very conservative method of spending gaming funds by waiting at least 1 year after receiving them. Therefore, be it resolved, the City of Courtenay financial plan consider the reduction of annual gaming funds used to pay for 2 RCMP officers by transitioning these costs to the general operating budget, where the balance of Courtenay's contribution to annual policing services is funded.
I'll second that.
Thanks. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I guess just a little background information maybe from staff, Mayor. Those 2 positions, I assume they add up to $500,000 or so, but I might be wrong. What do those numbers look like?
I'll pass it over to staff. I know those numbers were sent to me, but I've closed my email, so I don't have it open at this moment in time. But Trevor, if I could leave it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't have those exact figures, but if Mrs. Nelson, our Director of Financial Services, can answer that, I'll pass it over to her.
Thank you through the CAO to Mayor and Council. We fund $405,000 per year out of gaming to support the 2 positions within policing.
And then I would assume that that goes up per their contract, et cetera.
We currently haven't incorporated any increase to that amount. It's just been $405,000 across the board in the 5-year financial plan. So it's a little bit more than the cost of 2. That's just what it's worked out to over our funding methods to keep the tax rate reasonable. So if we were to transition with this resolution, we would be looking at moving over the course of the next few years to try to reduce that amount and bring it down.
Yeah, because I think, 400,000, that would be, is that in excess of 2% just in above itself, or over 1% for sure?
Yeah, so a 1% increase to taxation is approximately $240,000 a year. So it's just under 2% tax increase.
Excellent. Councillor Frisch, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Mara. So I guess a question to you is the intention of this resolution then to just get this off of a fund that we don't know if it's going to exist or not, and then hopefully we would start funding these positions again in the future from the gaming monies?
Well, personally, my goal here is really dealing with the pandemic and the loss of those revenues. But it is something that I've brought up in the past, probably for the last 5 or 6 years, just with the fact that we're paying for operations through gaming funds. And so although it does have a positive effect on our taxation, so it means that we can increase our taxes by a lesser amount every year. The downside is exactly what we're seeing with the pandemic right now, or the fact that these funds are not guaranteed. They basically are given to us from the gaming program, but it's something that could disappear just with a stroke of a pen at the provincial level. So that's the concern that I have, is that as we've even seen this year, and again, I think it deserves kudos to staff and the historic policy that we don't spend money for a year, because right now we're seeing a reduction of about 75% in gaming revenues this year. So our gaming revenues for 2020, and we'll assume at this point that the casinos may not be opening in the near term, wouldn't even cover that $400,000 amount that we normally put in there. So that's the concern that I have, is one, we're paying in operations things from gaming funds. And because it's such a significant amount and has the potential to grow even larger, that could really hurt us if we lose gaming funding for any other reason, let alone the pandemic.
Okay, well, thanks. So basically, it's to just get us off the expectation that those monies will always be there to fund operations. Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. And if we look at every municipality that gets these agreements from casinos, has the right to do with them as they please. But looking at what some of our neighbors do in other municipalities across the province, most of them use these funds more for specific or to top up other projects. But I couldn't find any that were necessarily putting it directly towards policing. With that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Certainly understand this year with potentially 75% or more of the funds not going to be available, it makes it very, very difficult to have the expectation that we're going to be able to pay $400,000+ towards the policing that of the 2 officers that we have in the past. But having said that, part of the gaming funds were also for the greater good of the overall community and for everybody in the community, and funding police officers was one of those components. And again, with the funding of the police officers through the gaming funds in the past, it has saved all our citizens money in the past towards the taxes that they would be paying. And I think that this year could be an anomaly. It may not be. You're correct in that regard. But I would suggest that if things get back on track, which who knows what's happening with gaming, beyond the COVID, there's also there are also other issues with gaming at the moment, and that could also create some issues with gaming that have nothing to do with COVID, but just the operations of gaming across BC. And the funding, I believe, should be returned to the office to pay for the officers if gaming gets back on track to the point that they were in the past. Because as I say, I would be very disappointed to see a time where our citizens are already struggling with with trying to cover their taxes to be hit with another increase in the taxes, because this certainly would have impact on our tax base moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Theos. And so you probably get the fact that that's why I want this to be a planned transition right now, so it doesn't have that huge impact in such a short period of time. Again, it would have been, from my perspective, possibly better if we'd started this earlier on. But if we also look at the fact that policing is, like, the cost of policing, generally speaking, is pretty static. It may go up a little bit, but gaming revenues are a little bit less like that. So we have that hard cost of policing that we really can't defer or put to another year. Whereas, you know, if we take that money and look at what some of the other municipalities are doing, and they actually put it towards, you know, grants and aid, which we do that to a certain extent, and to projects that would otherwise not get funding. We've also used it for asset management to keep our asset management moving forward. So there's certainly things that we can do. And I think if we look even at the amount of sort of other costs that are coming our way in terms of providing social services that really are within the purview of the province or the federal government, but because they've abdicated their responsibility in some of these roles, and I think right now we're seeing a big push to get that funding back in place. But I think there's that expectation that they have now that we come as a partner with funding for that. So that's the challenge that we're faced with.
If I may have a follow-up, that is a good point. And moving forward, maybe we should have a more consistent amount that that we're going to allocate towards offsetting taxes. And that's something I had brought up in the past, is to say, for instance, if we're paying out to the two officers 400,000+, and I understand your point about the fact that the balance could be more so paying for the police officers' increases compared to what the revenue bringing in would be. But then, as in terms of an alternate method of how we're contributing to see the greater amount of people in our community receiving a benefit from the gaming funds, maybe we should allocate 40% of what our gaming funds are directly to go into our overall stream, which would reduce the burden of the taxpayer and be a consistent number of 40%. So I think, you know, I mean, that's just a number I'm throwing out there, but I think that would be a more even and fair way to ensure that as many people as possible in our community receive benefit from the gaming funds.
And I really appreciate that, Councillor Theos, because I think, you know, there's two things going on here. One is we sort of have a crisis in front of us that we have to address, but that having that long-term discussion of how do we actually utilize our gaming funds so that as a council and as a municipality, we think we're using it the best way, I think is really that longer discussion. And so, no, I really appreciate any kind of feedback like that. And, you know, as you know, as our meetings that we've had with the finance minister and our premier, I've long advocated for the fact of, you know, municipalities getting a portion of the PST, the provincial sales tax, for a portion of the liquor tax, for a portion of the property transfer tax, and even investigated creating our own gas tax at the recommendation of the Minister of Finance. And so, you know, we need to make sure that our tax foundation is sustainable going into the future. And I think that's one of the things as a lot of municipalities have sort of pushed, especially going into this past election, a lot of, we're sort of part of that urban municipal request to really rethink the financial arrangement, when as a municipality, you know, we're getting, you know, 8 cents or so on the dollar of each tax dollar, yet, you know, well over half of the tax dollars are spent on municipal projects. It doesn't make necessarily that much sense to be chasing grants all the time, except from the perception, I guess, of photo ops and getting credit for a particular government. But I think really for us, we want to have that sustainable sort of budgetary process in place so that we can make sure we're not, having to increase our taxes massively just because the casino closes down for a period of time. So, and again, other municipalities are getting hit. Comox right now, because of their population, their policing costs are going up exponentially for them. And so it's really having this discussion, which again, I know as a council we've had over the years repeatedly with provincial government. I'll pass it over to Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. And yeah, thanks for bringing this issue forward and allowing us to have a discussion around it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that trying to fund these two positions from gaming in our 2021 budget doesn't make a whole lot of sense with no real predictable revenue stream coming in. So I think it's really important that we have this discussion. I do have a few questions around it, though. First of all, last year, or our previous budget, we increased the taxation for the RCMP because we'd received information that the vacancy rate was going to change by a few police officers. And I'm wondering if those vacancies have changed, or if in the end we ended up putting that towards our policing reserve.
Maybe I'll just jump in through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So we've only received the first two invoices for the year. So the vacancy rate is looking around 3 to 4 members, and we budgeted for 2. But again, we haven't seen the third and fourth quarter costs come in. So I'd be reluctant to say that anything about the vacancy rate. There was also significant severance settlements that the RCMP settled within their contract. So those were some costs that came in as well. We did budget for those, but those have come in. So at this point, it's kind of premature to say what that vacancy rate will be and whether or not we have any surplus at the end of the year to put back into the reserve or use for the future for next year.
And just to follow up there, it sounds as though we won't have that information in time for the budgeting process either. Is that correct?
We will receive that third quarter invoice in the next few weeks. So we usually receive that for the budgeting process, but that final year-end one usually comes in late. But we can do some better estimates at that point. So when we get to the budgeting process, we'll be able to give you a better estimate of where we think it's going to land and what we can utilize for next year's budget. Great,
thank you. And I have another question, and I'm not sure if staff are able to answer this off the fly, but our previous practice has obviously been to fund these two positions from our gaming revenue. And I'm curious as to whether or not that came from a resolution just like what we're discussing today, or if that has been a past practice that's evolved, because I know some of the funding that we allocate has come through a resolution and others perhaps not. So if staff could answer that, if anyone knows the answer.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So we, as you'll recall, through the Finance Select Committee, we reviewed the 5-year gaming fund financial plan. And so that's historically been occurring every 3 years prior. So originally, when the original gaming was established, there would have been a 3-year gaming fund matrix that would have gone to council and been approved by resolution. And so within that, it would have identified how much funding would have gone towards policing. And that was established at the onset and been carried forward with future councils.
Great, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. So it hasn't been specific, but the whole picture has been approved by council as we've moved forward.
That's correct. Yeah.
I guess my question then is, if we're going to look at gaming as as its own fund and do some planning around this, do we need a resolution from council in order to not fund these two positions for the next fiscal, or can that come out of the budget process? Like, is some direction from council required now, or can this wait?
So
Yeah, maybe, oh, sorry, Jennifer. Maybe I'll just quickly jump in. Yeah, one of the things we talked about at a staff level today was that it would be helpful to get some direction for the budget process. And just so the council's aware, council's going to be contemplating the water and sewer budgets hopefully on November the 30th. We're still waiting some bulk water rates from the regional district for sewer and water. And then staff's going to begin working on the general budget in December. So by January, council should see the first draft budgets. But yes, I think that some direction would help us along.
Thank you. I guess I'll just finish up with my line of questioning, and that I think that it makes perfect sense that we would not deplete what's left of our gaming fund to fund these policing positions. But I mean, I certainly don't have a crystal ball in what's going to happen with gaming a year from now, and I'm not comfortable putting in a direction that at this point in time, when there's so much uncertainty about the entire, state of things in so many different avenues, that we would make some kind of determination going forward, changing our policy around gaming and policing at this point. So I'm absolutely in support of, what the resolution outlines for 2021, but I don't want to put in any kind of directive as to how it should be treated a year out from now, because I just think that there's too many unanswered questions in what's going to happen when we have this discussion next year. So that's kind of where I'm landing on this right now. I'll let others have a turn. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor McCollum. And because I was looking to create motions around those taxes that I was talking about, PST, liquor tax, et cetera, to go towards the provincial governments for. But those are really long-term things, and there are lots going on right now. So just with my discussion with staff, this seemed to be the thing that's kind of right in front of us right now. So that's why I thought it was probably good for us to at least get this discussion happening right away. And like I said, I know I'm pretty biased from the beginning, just in terms of using these specifically for operating costs if in the policing realm, just because of the cost going up and then the unknown funding going forward. So I appreciate your comments. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for bringing this forward. So I'm going to make a couple of points. First of all, I want to echo part of what Councillor Theos said earlier, but put it in a slightly different context. Courtenay has always felt that it takes on an undue burden of the policing costs for the entire Comox Valley, and we've made numerous submissions to the province over the years, making requests that the funding formula for how RCMP services are paid for be changed. In my view, the allocation of gaming funds to pay for two officers' positions has been an attempt in part to rectify that with money that comes to us, and with the understanding that it be used for the benefit of the larger community. So I would argue that it makes sense on that basis, until there's a new formula for assessing policing costs, to continue using those funds as we have, if they are available to us. That'd be my first point. The second point will actually be a question, and that's to our finance officer through staff. I'm wondering if we, in fact, have enough in the gaming fund reserve that we could put this money towards those two policing positions in the next year's budget, if we chose to do that.
Yes, thank you for the question through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So we're anticipating at the end of 2020, based on our conservative $250,000 worth of revenue coming in, that we will have approximately $800,000 left at the end of this year, which would then be available for spending in the next year. So yes, we would have enough funds, but that being said, we need to remember that we're also committing to providing funding to some of our cultural partners within the gaming fund in that year, as well as commitments towards infrastructure and offsetting some of the infrastructure levy. So really that fund is going to have to be reviewed regardless in terms of how much we assign to all of those items. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thanks for clarifying that. So I think that the way the resolution is worded, in the therefore section, it says, be it resolved that the City of Courtenay financial plan consider. So what we're asking essentially is for staff to put consideration. And then it goes on to talk about transitioning these costs to the general operating budget. It doesn't specify when, and it doesn't, in my view, make it an absolute mandate. I actually think that that's prudent, because I would like to see staff come forward with providing us with what our options are. And if one of those options is in fact to use gaming reserves to continue paying this in the coming year, which we expect to be a difficult one, then I think that should be an option for council to consider. We don't know when gaming revenues will be replenished, or if they will be replenished, but I think we don't want to necessarily lock in to a long-term plan here. So I'll certainly support this resolution, because I think it gives staff flexibility, and it preserves some flexibility for council to consider options as to how we manage this in the year to come. Thank you.
And thanks, Councillor Hillian, for those words. And I think, again, we did strike the Select Finance Committee to really look at different kinds of funding mechanisms. And I guess one of the big challenges, that kind of got I guess, sideswiped by COVID-19 and everything that's going on. So, no, I appreciate those comments. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. In general, I'm happy to support the resolution, but I did have a question for development services, and you may not have the answer, but I'm wondering if there is are there any new assets expected to come online next year that might help our tax situation? Any significant ones, anyways?
Thanks very much, through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So as far as assets, I'm assuming you mean new developments that would be contributing to our tax revenues, not new infrastructure. So
that's what I meant. Taxable assets.
Yeah, so those would be likely coming on next year. There's a number of apartments under construction that have building permits issued, some that are just in the queue now, and some that are under construction, but those would likely be late next year, and then into 2022 before they receive final approval and occupancy, at which time then we'd be collecting taxes.
Good to know. Thanks so much.
All right. I don't see any other further questions or comments. Like I said, I look at this as sort of that first volley of getting the conversation happening, again, helping staff have a little bit of direction. I think that this is a conversation that will continue for quite some time, just based on where we are right now. So with that, I'll poll council for their vote, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Thanks for discussing this topic. I really appreciate it. And next on the agenda, we have, I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to read my resolution, but I just want to make two minor changes to the therefore clause, and that's to insert a comma after the word therefore, and in the third line to strike out the second of. It doesn't substantially change the motion, but it makes it a little more readable, and I'll read it now. Whereas the City of Courtenay has continued to adhere to Provincial Ministry of Health and WorkSafe BC guidelines to maintain essential services and promote the safety of city staff and citizens during the COVID-19 global pandemic. Whereas guidance from the World Health Organization, the BC Centre for Disease Control, and Island Health identifies the most effective ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 as frequent hand washing, maintaining physical distancing, and staying home when sick. Whereas each of these authorities recommends that masks be used as part of a comprehensive strategy to prevent COVID-19 transmission. Therefore, to help prevent the spread of COVID-19, be it resolved that the city strongly encourages all citizens to follow provincial health guidelines, including the recommendation of wearing face masks when in indoor public spaces, and especially if physical distancing is not possible, and that this information be prominently displayed on the city website along with links to relevant provincial sites.
I'll second that.
And if I could speak to the motion, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the websites are the website from the Centre of Disease Control and also the Provincial Restart Program, both of which make reference to the wearing of face masks when in indoor public spaces, which is something that was just added in the last couple of weeks. I think we're all alarmed to see the rising case numbers related to COVID-19. And while they're primarily in the Fraser Health region, and we can still take some relief from the low numbers on Vancouver Island, numbers of our citizens are concerned that we need to do all that is possible to prevent the spread in our community and to ensure that Vancouver Island and our community in particular is able to maintain the low numbers that we've been able to date. And so I've had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Charmaine Enns, our medical health officer, and run this resolution by her. And she made some suggestions which have been incorporated, supported the city passing this. As you know, we've had correspondence from people who think we should be mandating the use of masks. And we've had other correspondence from people who vehemently disagree with that. What this resolution does is it puts the city squarely on the side of our public health officials who have continued to make strong recommendations without imposing mandates and have relied on the goodwill, community spirit, and common sense of the vast majority of our residents to help us to take practical measures that would prevent the spread of this very serious pandemic. So having said that, I would encourage council to support the resolution. I think it's a good step for us to take so that we're squarely on the side of public health and we maintain the excellent work that the city has done in adhering to all public health and WorkSafe guidelines since this pandemic started. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, and really appreciate you bringing this forward. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Mano.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Doug. I appreciate your comments. The reality is that everybody has a different story and a different reaction to what's been going on right now in our community, in the broader Vancouver Island, the province, and in the world. And I wouldn't want to shame anybody for not wearing a mask. For some people have valid reasons why they can't. But at the same time, the motion that Doug has that Councillor Hillian has put forward, it does say that we're just strongly encouraging people to do that. It's not making it mandatory, but we need to be role models in this case, because our role would be to ensure that the safety of the citizens for health and the safety of our business community is not compromised by being in a position where we're having to close down any of our facilities or that the province is going to mandate any business closures. Our business community and our citizens just cannot be in a position where that can keep happening over and over again. It's just too difficult of a burden. So, you know, we all have to work at doing our part. And again, the reality for one person may be a little bit different than another person, but the following of the guidelines, in many ways, those were really common sense guidelines, like washing your hands and not going to work or not going out to the fitness centers when you're sick. You know, these are things that I think are going to have a silver lining for years to come, because that just makes sense. And it made sense before COVID that people wouldn't be doing that and conducting themselves in that way of basically knowingly going out and when they're ill and you know, spreading germs to other people. So I do believe there will be silver linings, but again, I do also feel that for everybody, there's a different story, and I can understand all of those stories.
Thanks, Councillor Theos, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks to Councillor Hellion for bringing this forward. I certainly feel like I can support the motion as it's written. And I did want to ask for one point of clarification, and that's in the actual therefore resolution portion. It says that this information be prominently displayed on the website and other places. And I'm wondering if that refers to the whole gambit of precautions that should be taken. And I mention that because, you know, washing your hands and maintaining social physical distancing are actually far more effective than masks. Is that the intention of the motion?
Well, if I can respond, I would leave it to the wisdom of our staff to craft how this would go on the website if this resolution is passed. All that information about washing your hands and keeping your distance and staying home when ill is in fact on the websites of the health agencies. And I think that we want to give people the encouragement to follow those instructions. So whether staff puts the resolution and the websites or adds to it, I think our staff do a good job at making these types of decisions. I would leave it in their capable hands.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mentioned it because I want people to know, or this is what I believe, that if you are in fact extremely concerned about being infected because you're either immunocompromised or you don't want to have to deal with the disease, then wearing the mask isn't certainly the first thing or only thing that you should do. So I just want to make sure that we're not skewing the perception that wearing a mask means you're safe and forgetting about the other parts.
Yeah, good point. And that information is really clear on the Center for Disease Control website. It doesn't overemphasize the protective value of masks. As we all know, when you wear a mask, you're primarily protecting others, so it takes on a collective action aspect. But again, I think we treat our citizens as adults. We provide them with the information, and we don't necessarily slant it in the direction that isn't backed up by the science and the information from our healthcare providers.
Yeah, so maybe a link to that site. I assume we already have it. I think we do, but yeah, reinforcing that link to the BC Center for Disease Control website would be better.
And Trevor, Krishna, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is probably a good time to mention that the EOC, our EOC, has just initiated a robust communications plan that aligns perfectly with this motion. And I will say that staff are completely in support of this motion. And new placards and posters and communications plan is coming out through the city and the regional district, and is going to be posted in all city and all local government facilities throughout the valley.
That's great to hear, and I think one of the big things here, I mean, we can nitpick about stuff, I suppose, in terms of the wording, but really it's about following those provincial health guidelines, which could change over time. So I think that, as Councillor Hellion said, You know, not only is it leaving it up to staff to make sure that it's executed properly, and we have the EOC that's going to be supporting, and there's going to be sort of a concerted Comox Valley-wide communication strategy. But as those communications need to change, you know, again, I think everybody's aware, biggest weekend in terms of cases in BC. So it's one of those things that we're top of mind of, and just to provide that leadership and make sure that people are following those guidelines as best they can. And Councillor Morin.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll support this. Because of the way it's worded. I guess I'm following a little bit along Councillor Frisch's idea that the outbreaks that we've seen lately has been stressed for being indoors and people expanding bubbles. And so I think that, you know, if the EOC has a broader kind of message that they're giving that goes along with this, that's probably good. And I know that Dr. Enns has said that mass is sort of on the, I believe she says it's the kind of the bottom of the list in terms of out of the recommendations. The consistent message has been from the start to keep bubbles small and to socially distance. Mass has come back and forth, and you know, I wear my mask all the time, et cetera, when I'm out. But I think that the message, especially going into the winter and being in indoor spaces, whether that's, you know, in businesses downtown or in private homes or in our facilities that are open, though that message I think needs to be also out there loud and clear, because that is what you know, what we're seeing on the mainland is these gatherings indoors in close quarters with people. And so I guess I'm, you know, like I say, I'm supportive of, you know, I'll vote in support of it, but I don't think that it's stressing the most important message that we need to get across. Thanks.
Excellent, and I think, you know, for myself, when I read this, you know, two things. One, absolutely, it's not the most effective way of reducing it. Washing your hands frequently, hand sanitizer, having the space between you, small groups. I think right now, she said, you know, your house plus your safe six, I think is the latest one. We just had Halloween, which was a big event. We're obviously adjusting things for Remembrance Day. But I think part of it is just keeping that message as positive as possible and following those guidelines. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I think most of the points I was wanting to raise have probably been addressed already. And I do agree that mask wearing is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve the entire problem, but it's you know, we have to use the tools we have, and assuming people are doing things like washing their hands regularly, keeping their bubbles small, all of those sensible things, that for the times where you have to be out in public, like when my kids ride the bus to school every day, things like that wearing a mask, in that case it's required, but for this resolution suggesting that people encouraging people to use them when in indoor public situations just makes a great deal of sense. And I think it provides a bit of support for those folks in the community, including businesses who are encouraging the use of masks, to see that there's some official support for that. And studies around the world have shown that while it's not perfect and it doesn't answer all the problems, the more mask use there is, the less likely the likelihood is of having to go to the sort of shutdowns that have been so hard on people personally, and they've been hard on people's health, and they've also been hard on our economy. So it's certainly not the whole answer, but I think it's a very well-crafted and carefully nuanced resolution, which acknowledges that masks have a role to play, and we'd like to encourage people to do that. So I thank Councillor Hillian for bringing this to the table today.
Thanks, Hamilton. And I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. And I think, again, this really aligns really well with our provincial public health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. And you know, you know, I even have the shirt, you know, it's not about necessarily being militant about things, but really being calm, being kind, and just making sure that we're staying safe as best we can. So I think that this really does that in a relatively effective way and allows us as a council to provide some of that leadership to our community. So again, thank you so much, Councillor Helene, for bringing this forward. And with that, I will poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in support.
And I'm in favor as well. So that's unanimous. Thanks very much. And with that, I will pass it over to Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a piece of housekeeping. When drafting this resolution, there was a part of the preamble which is technically incorrect, the part that's struck out. And the background is that the Parliament of Canada, the House of Commons, did pass and adopt UNDRIP, but it was making its way through the Senate when the election was called last year. And when Parliament is prorogued, everything that's in process, it's on the order paper, disappears. So as a consequence of last year's election, it was not officially adopted conclusively by the Senate. So anyway, the correct reading, you can see the line is there. So removing UNDRIP was officially adopted by the Government of Canada in 2016, and just replacing that with the Government of Canada announced their commitment to adopt and implement UNDRIP in 2016. Just a small change, but just to ensure that it's factually correct. And that's it.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian, for that, for seconding it. And Councillor Frisch.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I was just going to suggest that maybe we don't have to actually vote on the resolution because it's just the preamble. But if we wanted to fix it on our website and such, it would make a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
And in our minutes.
Mr. Ridge informed me that this, out of an abundance of caution, this was the appropriate route to take. So, well, I guess we'll go through that procedural route.
I still vote in favor of it then.
Yeah, and I just want to say, you know, one of the big things is a big shout out for both Councillor Hillian and Councillor Cole-Hamilton and many of the other councillors who have reached out to make sure that the motions coming forward are accurate and hopefully going to be effective. Councillor Hillian had discussions with our medical health officer Charmaine Enns, and so and Councillor Cole-Hamilton in drafting this talked with to Councillor Nicole Rempel regarding the UNDRIP stuff. So, you know, I mean, the thing that, you know, we are reaching out, we're trying to make sure that the resolutions we're bringing forward are factually correct as best we can. And if we find that there's a mistake, we fix it. So starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Favor.
I'm in favor as well. There we go. That was nice and quick. Next, we have a new business, the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board appointments.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that council appoint to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board for the one-year term, January 1st to December 31st, 2021. Councillor Theos and Councillor McCollum as alternate.
Second.
Yeah, it's been seconded by Councillor Morin. Thanks very much. And I'll poll council unless there's any questions or comments, but I don't see anybody racing for their clickers. Oh, Councillor Theos.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. You know, this year was a very challenging year for the library boards across the island, across the province, across the country. But there were some real success stories, and again, there were some real definite challenges that we're working towards. But the success stories were new facilities opening across the island, beautiful facilities. in many areas across the island, and upgrades to many of the other facilities. There was a real emphasis on ebooks this year, and we were really seeing the ebook usage go through the roof. It was incredible, the response and the connection that the libraries had with the public that they serve and represent, and be able to eliminate the fees, the late fees for children. I think that was another step that was very proactive and very welcomed by families that in many cases couldn't afford even the late fees. So these were real big steps. And again, some of the areas where we would have liked to have seen more success, was unfortunately we were asking for another $6 million a year, as we had talked about many times at our council meetings, the updates. I was so hopeful that was going to happen. We were hoping to move from 14 million to 20 million as in terms of provincial grants to offset some of our costs and some of our challenges at municipalities. As the mayor said earlier, 8 cents to every dollar of taxes goes to the municipalities, and it might even be lower than that. I've heard now it's gone down to 7 cents. So we're trying to do what we can with very little funding, and unfortunately we didn't get that extra 6 million that was long being pushed for, and it was very that was a tough moment, but we also had the closure with the COVID being a devastating situation, absolutely devastating for people that depend on libraries for their social hubs, and right now trying to really work towards opening up all those libraries again in a safe and effective manner, that we won't have to be opening, closing. It's been the pandemic's really taken a toll on the library system. So we're seeing some positivity now, as in terms of reopening and doing it in a manner that was very creative and effective, and hopefully we'll keep moving in a progressive manner in that regard.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Theos, for that. And I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor as well. I don't know if we're supposed to clap now, but congratulations for your appointment. And we'll move on into bylaws, first and second reading.
Mayor, I'll move that.
Go ahead,
Mayor. Okay, sure. I'll move that official community plan amendment bylaw number 3014-2020, a bylaw to amend official community plan bylaw number 2387-2005 to change the land use designation to multi-residential and amend map number 2 land use plan 1375 Percy Avenue, receive first and second reading.
Second.
All right, that's been seconded. Thanks very much. And any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Excellent.
I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 3005-2020, which is a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2500-2007 to rezone property from residential 2 to comprehensive development zone 29, and amend schedule number 8 zoning map accordingly for 1375 Percy Avenue, receive first and second reading.
Seconded.
All right, that's been seconded. I don't see any questions or comments, so I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor?
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCollum.
In favor.
And Councillor Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor as well. And for final adoption.
I can move this, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll move that City of Courtenay Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 3022, 2020, a bylaw to amend City of Courtenay Fees and Charges Bylaw number 1673, 1992 to include Schedule of Fees and Charges Section 3, Appendix 4, Solid Waste Collection Fees to establish municipal solid waste recyclables and yard waste user fees, receive final adoption.
Second.
Excellent. And I don't see any questions or comments. So starting with Councillor Hamilton
In favor.
and Councillor Frisch. And Councillor, I saw you say it, I didn't hear it, but I think we got that. Councillor Gillian,
In favor.
Councillor McCollum,
In favor.
Councillor Moran,
In favor.
Councillor Theos,
In favor.
and I'm in favor as well. Are you okay with that, Ms. Shribster? Excellent. All right. Only one thing left on the agenda.
Move adjournment.
Excellent. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'll assume everybody is in favor of adjournment. Thanks everybody for your time today, and yeah, have a great night.